Black as night, worse death from our sight. White as light, mighty hectate make it right.
I myself am strange and unusual.
It's time to cast a circle, spark some incense, and grab a cup of tea, because it's time for the Cousins Coven podcast. I'm Sharon.
And this is Wendy. Hi, you guys. Welcome back.
Welcome back to the Coven, guys. The current moon is in Taurus, and it is a waxing Gibbons moon. And just a heads up, the full moon is going to be coming to us this Saturday.
Whoop, whoop.
Yay, full moon power. And here's some words of advice for the full moon in Taurus. When you accept yourself for who you are, it'll become easier for you to find peace and tranquility in the outside world.
Oh, I really like that.
Right? I think that makes sense for people with anxiety. Like, just trust in yourself. Stop worrying.
That's right. Oh, man. I just worry all the time about stupid stuff.
Yes, I know exactly what you mean, especially after that long retrograde.
I know. Oh, my gosh. That was a rough one.
Definitely.
A lot of crying out of my one eye.
Your one pirate eye.
I know.
I definitely cried a lot this retrograde to where the point where, like, my eyes are burning and I don't want to go in public. Like, yeah. Oh, Pisces.
I know.
So we just wanted to give a heads up to you guys. We are working on something new. We are working on a newsletter. You may have seen us talk about this on our Instagram, but we're really excited. So each month we're going to come together and write up on witchy correspondences for the month. What are the Sabbats and Esbats coming up? And of course, we're going to include our weird news, our alien stuff, our cryptozoology stuff, and all of our crazy conspiracy theories. We're going to just hit you all with that once a month with some cool stuff. And it's just a way for us to reach out with you and ask you some specific questions and hope get some response from you guys so we can start including more questions on our podcast.
Yes, it's going to have so much information in there. So make sure to subscribe, which you can do on our website at www.cousinscoven.com, or you can find us at cousinscoven.home.blog. Either way, you're going to get there.
Yes, so go on there and subscribe. That would mean a lot to us, and we could stay in touch. And also, I know we want to mention that on a lot of the newer platforms that we're getting followers on, like Spotify, that you can only listen to like our latest episodes. And if you want to go back and listen to all of our content, if you're interested, just to see what other weird stuff we've been talking about and researching, you can go to that website as well and listen to the entire backlog.
Yeah.
So yay, stay in touch, guys. Keep listening.
Yes, keep listening. We're so happy to have you along.
Yeah. So I did come across some cool UFO news happening down here in Texas I wanted to share.
Ooh, tell me.
So there have been sightings, multiple sightings of cigar-shaped UFOs, and they've even caught them on film. So there's actually a video. I'm going to see if I can find a way to put that up on our Instagram. But it's just like of the pink sunset sky and this white cigar-shaped light just staying stationary. And this happened over in Keller, Texas, which is like just outside of Fort Worth, back in November 15th. And so the video, it only lasts for like maybe a minute long, but the person who saw it, they wanted to stay anonymous, and they said that they were watching it for over 20 minutes and it did not move. And so they said that it also looked really reflective, and it's really cool looking. Some people maybe thought, well, is it a blimp? But the Texas UFO Society, they looked it up and they couldn't find any evidence of blimps in the area. People thought maybe because they keep seeing these cigar shapes over Texas at sunset, is it just the clouds reflecting light? But they really can't find like an explanation for it yet. And so this happened over in Copperas Cove, Texas as well on the same day, November 15th at 2:55 p.m. They didn't get it on film or take a picture. So that one's just, someone just saw it but didn't capture it. And then on September 11th of this year, they also found a picture taken in Texas, Conroe, Texas, of two of those cigar shapes hovering on the sunset sky.
And what do you think it is? Is there like a military base nearby, or?
Not that that's come in my radar on these articles. No one's mentioning that. I want to say it's aliens.
Yes, I do too.
I'll definitely share the picture though, because it's a gorgeous like pink sunset and then just these two white objects.
Well, I thought I just read today, actually, that over the past couple of days, there's been some sightings in San Antonio.
I didn't even know that. Are you serious?
Yes. Right before we started recording, I was reading up on some news to see if there was something I could talk about. And I just read briefly that there was a sighting in San Antonio, and it was kind of over the past couple of days.
I need to look into that. What are they saying they see?
So I should bring it up really quick if you don't mind.
Yeah, because I'm wondering if it was just a set of lights or what is it they're seeing.
Let's see. It was Foo Fighters reported following fighter jets over San Antonio. So Foo Fighters are like globe type stuff that they used to see in World War II. They were like globe-shaped UFOs, but then apparently at the Air Force Base in San Antonio, they took some pictures and saw that there were these globes in the pictures that looked like UFOs. They said that they were flying toward the southwest from the Air Force Base. I didn't know you guys had an Air Force Base there.
Yeah, there's a lot of like military bases here.
I also didn't know that apparently Texas has a UFO website.
Yeah, Texas UFOs.
Yeah, I didn't know that.
I just found out today, too, because of those cigar-shaped sightings.
Yeah. Oh, I thought it was over the past couple of days, but it says the article just came out today, but it was from November 26th.
Okay.
They saw it around 2 p.m. and then again at 2:04. They just see these, what they call Foo Fighters. And like I said, Foo Fighters are kind of like these orb-shaped bright light UFOs, and they zoom really fast.
Interesting. So keep your eyes on the skies, guys.
Yeah. Yeah, look for those fireballs and those cigar-shaped UFOs.
That's cool. I will try to look out. I never see anything, but I'm so busy focused on the ground level that I never look up.
Yeah, and as far as I can read, it sounds like they were seeing those in the daytime.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So just while you're out, if you're going to the grocery store, just look up.
Yeah. All right. So should we move on to cauldron topics?
Yeah. So we have using present tense in magical writing and thinking.
Nice. I heard about this because of Stargirl the Practical Witch. She has kind of come up on YouTube just this year, but gotten a pretty decent following. She's got some good content. And she was talking about manifesting and how when you write down what you want in life to always do it in the present tense, just because that's the way that our universe works. It works in like the law of attraction kind of thing. So you don't want to state that you want these things, but that you have them, and that'll bring it to you and make it a reality. So I thought that was really powerful, and it really stuck with me. So now I try to do that all the time.
Yeah, this is something I've been doing for several years, but I think it was because, do you ever remember the book The Secret?
Yeah. Uh-huh.
Yeah, so they kind of talked about that in there, about
law of attraction.
If you want something, yeah, if you want something, then you need to act like you already have that something.
Which I think is valid.
So, yeah, very much so. And so I've been using it for quite a while. It's very important.
Yeah, I think it's perfect for manifesting, which we actually plan on talking about soon. So
yeah, within the new year.
Yeah, it's a good time for that. People are making goals at the new year, so
right.
We'll get into that again soon. Should we grab one more little topic?
Yes. Let's see here. We have altar versus no altar.
Ooh, okay. So this is basically us.
Yeah, this is exactly us.
I want to hear your perspective. I'm an altar kind of person. I know you're a no altar kind of person.
Right. But for years, I did have my own altar. I think I had an altar by the time I was 16 without really knowing that's what it was. Mm-hmm. And so I remember for me, I always put like, oh, you know what a table runner is, right?
Yeah, yeah.
So I always had some sort of fabric or a scarf or something that I'd use. And then I put candles and incense on it and rocks. But then I stopped doing that when I had kids because I didn't have a space in my home for it. And so then it just became normal for me not to have one. And now I pretty much have my altar in a box that I bring out every time I have this special...
Oh, like a travel altar.
Yeah. And so now I just bring that out whenever I want to use it.
That sounds really cool.
Yeah.
I'm definitely, I started doing the altar immediately when I started reading about witchcraft. Everything that I was taught early on, I noticed all my books were like from a Wiccan perspective. So that's really ingrained in me. So I just had like a very traditional Wiccan altar with like representing the god and the goddess candles on there with the masculine and the feminine sides, putting the tools on there, making sure to have like all the elements on there. You know, I think the most basic tools that they say in those books are like either have like a chalice, like a cup. You want to have an athame or a wand, bells, and candles, incense, that kind of thing. So I've always had some sort of form of that, and I'm always just kind of swapping it out based on the season or my style or what I have at the moment. But it's a very pagan-y looking altar. Like, if anyone has to stumble in here and do maintenance, it's a bit weird. They're like, what is that?
They're like, whoa,
Yeah.
what's going on here?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I've had standing altars, which I really liked, and then right now I have like a altar on the floor, so I can actually do like yoga in front of it and just kind of sit and meditate on the floor. I think that is the best way to go, because you can just kind of sit and get more comfortable instead of standing.
Yeah, right.
But yay for altars.
I know. They are kind of empowering if you think about it, because you have all of your favorite things and things that actually have some meaning to you. At least that's what I always think of when I think of an altar. Something that you are connected to, that you want to bring into the space.
Yeah, it's like your own little church, your own little corner of tranquility.
Exactly.
Yay for altars.
Yes.
Well, I know we have a big topic today. Maybe we should move on to our main topic.
I think you are correct.
Okay, so guys, we are tackling a big one. We wanted to talk about aliens in the Bible. And really, it's because of in honor of this Christmas and Yule season, we decided just to get biblical today. You know, we've talked about ancient aliens before. That was our first episode. And there's many ancient alien theorists who believe that the biblical text of our ancient civilizations have really been misinterpreted as a divine power instead of this extraterrestrial power that they truly were. And there's been UFO sightings in biblical texts, there's been otherworldly creatures, and a lot of strange interactions and abductions. So we wanted to just kind of tackle this, which was a lot of stuff to be researching in like a week's time. So
it is,
yeah.
It's a lot.
It really, really was. And to most people, they already have their minds made up on what they believe as far as creation mythos or religious outlooks. You know, a lot of us were put in a box at a young age, or we just found a box later on and we stuck to that box. But there's a quote I wanted to share to you guys that I think is kind of important to these kind of weird topics that we dive into. And here's the quote: "To be able to think freely with an open mind and theorize about these notions is, in a sense, what free will is all about. A self-inherited right that each man and woman obtains at birth. But open minds aren't born in a day, they're nurtured over time, influenced by both inner and outer travels, new experiences, new teachers, and new philosophies. Awakened and aware, they are now in the minority of their peers. These open-minded individuals now stare in complete awe of the zombies that surround them. Beware of the zombies." And that's Xavier Hayes. I just thought that was pretty interesting, because there's times when you research this type of stuff and your mind is blown and you can't really see things the same, and everyone else around you just like doesn't even want to open their eyes to hearing about these theories.
It's like they just pulled that wool over their eyes and they left it there. Mm-hmm. They don't even want to know what other things lay outside their comfort zone.
Right. So just be open-minded. Not saying you have to believe in any of this. I don't even know if I do, but I find a lot of this ancient text very fascinating, and there's a lot of ways you can interpret it.
Right. So one of the things we came across was the Annunaki, right? Mm-hmm. So they came from Planet X. Some people call that Planet 9 or Nibiru, and they were seen by the Sumerians around 3000 BC. And out there in archaeological digs, they've found literature, drawings, etc., all about these Anunnaki. And I know, Sharon, you did a bunch of research. Do you have some stuff you want to tell us?
Yeah, the Anunnaki I was never really familiar with before this, so I tried to learn a lot in a small amount of time. And it's kind of interesting. I'm like, why didn't we ever talk about any of the Sumerians in school? Because they were the really first ever advanced civilization to record. They were the inventor of the wheel, the modern calendar based on lunar cycles, the plow, irrigation systems, sailboats. They were really influential. And so some theorize that maybe this omission of teaching us this in school is like deliberate. Maybe they don't want us to know, you know, and we really dismiss the Sumerian creator origins as mythologies, but really like why don't we look at those and examine them more? So I found out that in 1849 there was an archaeologist who found 14 tablets in Sumeria, and they refer to creators of like Genesis and the Garden of Eden and these otherworldly beings and aliens, the Anunnaki, and like how they came from like that planet you were mentioning, Planet X. And there's all these crazy things that go into these tablets, and I only know a little bit about it. But basically, what I found out was that 445,000 years ago, they came to Earth, and that their early ancestors of man and animals were still there. But when the Anunnaki came, they were looking for gold because apparently the planet they're from, Nibiru's atmosphere, it was collapsing at the time, and that actually there's something about gold, the quality of it, that can rebuild the ozone. So they came here to mine, which I thought was pretty crazy. And the Anunnaki brought with them this alien race. I think it's called the Ejiji race. And they were basically like a slave race that they were using in really cruel ways to build structures, I believe like the pyramids, and to mine for gold. And they, at one point, this race tried to rebel against the Anunnaki, and they lost horribly, and pretty much all of them got annihilated in the process. So the Anunnaki genetically engineered a new workforce, which was a hybrid between the cavemen that were here on Earth at the time and the Anunnaki, and it became Homo sapiens, which is us.
Right.
So I thought that was a really interesting creator myth, and that they called that breed of man Adamu, which means Adam. Mm-hmm. And that the Anunnaki were pretty much considered to be giants in comparison to us, and at the time when they made them, that humans were sterile, so they decided to re-injure them to reproduce. And pretty quickly the cities became overcrowded, so they decided to cast them out. And so some people think that like some of the Christian mythos borrowed from this story, and that's where they came up with like Adam and Eve and being cast out of Eden type of thing.
Right. It's really interesting. Even on the pyramids, you'll see, and I'm sure if you just do a Google search of different pictures, there's actually some engravings where you can see an actual giant, what looks like a human, but a giant human, and then a smaller one next to him that's like no taller than its ankle. And so just think of the enormous size. If that were real, that is huge.
Yeah.
I mean, these are giants.
It's pretty disturbing. And like in the tablets, and I think in different hieroglyphs, you can see little flying saucers as well in the background.
Right.
So it kind of makes sense. It all starts lining up.
Right. And then if you think about, there's all these talks about them mating. And I just keep thinking, I'm like, that giant is huge. These people are small. How are they going to do that? Well, genetics. Mm-hmm. Genetic modifying. They weren't actually having intercourse. They were, because I think that would be impossible in my mind.
Right. I would hope so.
Yeah.
But there's a lot about these books that they don't really make sense to our current brains. It's like, what?
Right.
Yeah.
How is that?
Yeah. I also got really sidetracked in our biblical research when I found out about this book called the Book of Enoch. Have you ever heard of that?
Yes, it's one of there were so many books of the Bible that didn't even make it to what I consider the final cut. So,
yes.
This did not make it.
Yeah, that's what I found out, is this is actually one of the oldest texts ever found. This book is 5,500 years old, and the Enoch was actually Noah's great-grandfather. I didn't know about that. And the Enoch is even mentioned in the Bible. And the Book of Enoch, this whole mythos that I'm about to lay down, the only people who really believe in it and use it in their holy scriptures are Ethiopian Jews and the Ethiopian Orthodox Church, and a few other like obscure little religions, but most people do not take the Book of Enoch as fact. And when I started finding out what it was, I got like disturbed and super intrigued at the same time. I was like, oh my God, is this real? So in this book, it speaks of these angels that they call watchers, and that there are a group of angels that were sent to watch over earthlings at the time. And they decide to break the rules by mating with the women, of course. The women are just so hot, they have to come down and have sex with the women. And that the women gave birth to this angel-human hybrid race called Nephilim. And that they're giants, once again going back to this whole giants mythos. So the ancient alien theory is that watchers are actually just aliens, and they're not these like ethereal light beings like angels. They're actually just this alien race looking over humanity. And so the watchers who are breaking the rules, they're also teaching these women how to scry, how to use astrology, how to read, write, how to do sorcery. They even teach them stuff like cosmetics, like eye makeup. They teach them how to read the stars and constellations and meteorology, the phases of the moon. So they're really giving them all this like esoteric knowledge And I found that to be really cool. But
it is fascinating.
I know. I was like, I would totally have sex with one of these watchers. It'd be like, hey, Shiki, you want to learn about scrying?
Like, I'm just giving it up so I can get more knowledge.
Yeah, I feel like that guy would be like, he has wings. He's really smart.
He's got that glorious hair.
Yeah. So, but to the people who were in charge of like the Watchers, this was considered problematic because giving all this information freely didn't allow humans the opportunity to discover the arts by themselves, and these were considered eternal secrets. So it kind of made me happy to know that they didn't consider them evil, but it's just that we have to find these things out for ourselves.
Right. I actually thought it was too, because then they couldn't control us as their slaves.
Yeah, true.
Yeah.
That's true. Yeah. And so then again, that's going back to the woman getting this knowledge that she's not supposed to be having, kind of like Eve.
Right. Yeah.
So in total, it said that there were the 200 of these angels, the Watchers, who mated with the women. And that for some, this is one of those weird things. I'm like, how did they give birth to giants? But okay. So they give birth to these giants, and they turned against everyone. They were really violent. They were killing the animals and the humans. They were super bloodthirsty, and they started just like taking over the lands and causing a lot of problems. People believe this is an alien hybrid race that walked the earth. So there's artifacts about this, and people think that they dominated our planet for real before the Great Flood happened.
Right.
And this is all found in this ancient book called the Book of Enoch and these ancient scrolls. So it's really crazy. And people think it completes the lost fragments of time in our history. So I don't know if this is too out there, but I thought it was really interesting.
It's very interesting. And another thing about Enoch, I don't know if you read this, but I came across that he had lived on Earth for like 300 years. Now think of someone living for 300 years, but apparently when Adam and Eve were created, I'm still sticking with, if this is a fairy tale or some folk tale, then there's a possibility that if we were created by aliens in the lab, then we could live for a longer period of time, because these aliens can live for thousands and thousands of years.
Oh my gosh.
So Enoch, I know, right? Enoch apparently lived for 300 and some years here on Earth, teaching and he would get knowledge from God, or whoever you want to say it to be. He would get knowledge from this person and then bring it back to the people and give them the knowledge that he was given. So after he was done teaching, God said, I would really like you to come back with me. And so he took him from Earth and never came back. Mm-hmm. So there's no, I mean, he could still be out there living today. We don't know.
Enoch, he's out there.
Yeah.
That's
He's just
so
out
crazy.
There. He was taken up in the ship. And every time he would come back with knowledge for the people, he would always come back with this glow on his skin, like he'd been around radiation. But I think back then, if these were genetically modified people, then they could potentially handle radiation levels that we cannot handle today.
Yeah, I mean, if we're talking about alien races who were just discovering how to make humans, I'm sure we're not the same type that we were back then. So,
right,
like, who's to say that, like you said, they lived longer back then? I'm sure that if this is true, and if the aliens would want us to live shorter lifespans, we would be easier to control that way.
Right, exactly. Mm-hmm. So I found out one of the missing books was also the Book of Noah.
They love, like, in the Bible, Noah's family is the shit, apparently. They know a lot of stuff.
Yeah, they know a lot of stuff. And in there, it talked about, and I guess I can see why this didn't make it to the final cut of the Bible, because it was filled with magic and sex magic. And it also was talking about how all of the prophets at the time, what were considered to be prophets in the Bible, so all of them had gifts that were given to them by the Annunaki. So they were all given these gifts, like the gift of astrology, the gift of sight, just all of these gifts. So I guess that's why Noah's book didn't make it into the Bible, because he talked about how all of these people had these gifts, how they were using magic, how they were being taught this stuff.
That sounds really cool. As soon as you were talking about like sex magic, I'm like, oh, let's add that to the list of culture and topics to research.
Yes,
like
we need to research
if there's details in there, like I'm curious just to know what they're saying. That's hilarious, and I love it.
Right. Yeah, that's really interesting stuff.
It is interesting to me. They really like Noah's family, that he was really the only one who was who was able to survive after that whole, according to the book of Enoch, after the whole giant thing, these giants started having like these like prophetic dreams about floods happening. Right. And that's when Noah started building the ark, and he had the heads up, and only his family was going to be saved. And so they wiped out all of the giants and everyone else, but like they just kept Noah. That's so crazy.
Yeah, and anybody who would believe him. So the thing too is that Enoch, he knew about the flood hundreds of years before it even happened. So he actually was the one who was trying to get that information out there. And since Noah was related to Enoch, right? So
yeah, his grandson.
Enoch gave him that information, Noah, that information.
So yeah, he knew about it for a long time.
Yeah, their family knew about it. So
that makes more sense in the gathering of species.
Right.
They were doing it for a longer period of time. Oh, and this kind of blew my mind. So there have actually been skeletons found all over the world, including America, of giants.
I know. They actually had a TV show on History Channel about that.
There's ones found in Wisconsin. Again, Wisconsin's a crazy place.
Right. Considering that the layout of the earth. So that was after Pangea times. How did they get here?
It's kind of weird because I know that there's David and Goliath. You've got those giants in the Bible. I just didn't ever take it seriously. And then reading the book of Enoch and the Annunaki talking about just giants ruling the earth back then. Like,
right.
I guess it's possible.
I guess I've always believed in giants.
Really?
I've always believed in giants. I mean, look at my husband. He's huge.
I mean, if you're going to go like that route, like Andre the Giant. But I mean, these guys were giant.
These guys were huge.
Giant beasts. Yeah.
They make my husband look short. Like my husband's 6'5", 6'6". Well, I think when we first started dating, he was 6'7", but you know how the body degenerates in the spine. So he's like 6'5" now. And those giants were probably 10, 11, 12 feet tall. So that's just mind blowing right there. It's like the size of a tree.
Yeah, it really is. And it blows my mind.
Yeah. So I kind of wanted to talk about Adam and Eve.
Yes. Yes. Let's start from the beginning of the actual biblical text that we could find.
Yes. Yeah. The Adam and Eve creation myth. So I just have to say that over the years, there have been many versions of the Bible. Many religions and cultures tell the same story with different names, which I thought that was really interesting. I mean, there's stories in Aboriginal times. There's stories in China. Well, not just China, Asia, I should say. All over the world, there's a story of creation, but different names were used. And for the means of what I believe was to control the masses, the stories in the Bible were changed and molded and made what they wanted. They being the Romans, which were a top government agency for centuries. This new version of the Bible was meant to create fear and obedience. And today's version leaves out different books that tell of tales of those prophets practicing magic like we just talked about, and aliens visiting the earth. And this may be one of the most elaborate and overlooked cover-ups of all time.
I totally believe it.
Yeah, it's crazy because recently the Vatican has actually been jumping on board about aliens existing, and that they actually say that they have knowledge from the past of aliens having a hand in our creation.
So now they want to come out and say that? Really?
Yeah. I don't know if it's maybe they're trying to see how the world would react to the news. Because, I mean, think of how many... I wish I would have written down numbers, but there are like thousands and thousands of planets out there, millions of planets out there. To think that there's not some life on other planets is preposterous.
Well, what about this watcher theory? Do you think it's that aliens are just actually watching us, and that's why we're seeing UFOs?
I think so. You know, there's these theories that they're watching us to keep us from total annihilation.
Yeah.
I don't know. It's very possible. But let's go back to talking a little bit about Adam and Eve. So in the beginning of the Bible, it talks about God creating the world. And what I thought was really interesting is when they refer to God, they refer to him sometimes as a woman and sometimes as a man.
In which version of the Bible? The Hebrew Bible?
I read all these different versions of Genesis to study up on this. So I read like 3 or 4 different versions of the English Bible. I read the Hebrew Bible that was translated into English. And then I read another Bible prior to the Hebrew Bible that I read. So it was like all these 5 different texts. And they say, depending on which text you're reading, God is a woman or a man. And that made me think, and this may be way out there, but it made me think, what if God is an acronym for a company?
Google.
Yeah, Google. It's the first Google. So what if God is this company and God is really just a man and a woman, or this team of people?
Yeah, like if we're going to say aliens, maybe it is more than one person.
Right, exactly. And so then it referred to in almost every single version as the Lord. And Lord is capitalized like Lord. That the Lord is a part of God, but not God. And so for me, I was like, the Lord, like he's the boss. Mm-hmm. So there was a section that said, and the Lord God caused a deep sleep to fall upon Adam, and he slept, and he took out one of his ribs, and he closed up the flesh instead thereof, and the rib which the Lord God, meaning like the boss in this company of God, he took this rib from the man and molded it into a woman. So he did some sort of genetic modification.
Kind of sounds like, what if he abducted them, put him into some sort of anesthesia?
Yeah, he totally put Adam under and then created Eve from Adam.
Right. So it's like that could be totally interpreted as an alien kind of surgery.
Right. Exactly. So, and then when they woke up, they were like, he was like, this is your counterpart, a woman. And he made Eve because Adam couldn't do all the work by himself. So it says in there that Adam was doing this stuff, but he was kind of unhappy and he needed somebody else to help him out. Mm-hmm. So that's why he made Eve.
So maybe if we're looking at this like aliens, they're looking on Earth, they make just the human man race and they decide like it's a little boring, they need to spice things up. That's where women comes in.
Yeah, I think so.
Interesting.
So it's very interesting. I was like, okay. It definitely sounds like the Garden of Eden was just a lab. That's why we can't find it today. That's why nobody can actually find this Garden of Eden.
Right.
Because it was a lab. And it was interesting because they say that the garden was actually, they said, protected by these cherubim. So these angels.
Right.
So each entrance to the garden was protected by these angels. I was like, so they were guards.
Exactly. Like these are maybe watchers or whatever you want to call them, but they're just keeping us humans in line.
Yeah, exactly.
Mm-hmm. And this is so crazy. If that's how we were created, it just makes everything a little kind of scarier in my mind if it's true, because we really have no control.
Right. Mm-hmm. No control. I'm still on the theory that God was just a group of people, that it's not a person. I'm still sticking with the Lord as the boss. And in the middle of this garden, supposedly, or let's think of it as a building. So in the middle of this building, there was this knowledge, this tree of knowledge. And the Lord was like, look, I don't want you to go near this tree of knowledge, because if you go near the tree, then you're going to know all the things that I know. Or he didn't say that. You're just going to know the difference between right and wrong. So you didn't want it. So I thought, when I thought of that, I thought, okay, this tree, what if it's a computer and he were to, like on Chuck, watch this information and it's just uploaded into him? Like, and we don't know what kind of technology they have. So maybe this alien race has the ability to watch something to gain knowledge. So at this point, I'm thinking this tree isn't really a tree. It's just a video or form of information.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Because they were saying, if you're going to eat this, then you're going to gain all of this knowledge. If you eat this fruit, you're going to gain knowledge. So I was like, oh, so if you watch this TV show, you're going to gain some sort of knowledge.
Yeah. Trying to keep them more controlled.
Right, exactly. And then in comes this serpent. They say serpent, but to me, that just meant, what are those reptilians? I was like, what if he was just a reptilian? He comes in and he says, you know, the only reason why the Lord, he says in quotation marks, he's all, the Lord doesn't want you to watch this program because, you know, if you watch this program, you're going to be just as smart as he is. And then Eve is like, well, I want to watch that program because I want to be as smart as the boss.
Yeah.
And so she watches it, and then she shares that information with her husband. The Lord gets mad, shoves them out of the garden. where there's already people out in the planet.
Right.
There's already people out there.
Which didn't really make sense to me because I didn't know that that's how Genesis was written, that Adam and Eve were there, but there were people outside of that.
Right. So then if you think of the garden as a test lab, why wouldn't there be other people on the earth? Right?
Yeah. I really didn't know that because I just know the basics of the Bible and some of the stories that they tell kids, because that's really where all I got my information was Sunday school.
Right.
And the kids' first Bible, that's all I really had. So I just thought that Adam and Eve were it, and then supposedly the Christian thought was that we all stem from those two people.
Right.
So the Bible is saying that there's people all over. That's crazy.
Yeah.
It's crazy.
Yeah. Depending on what version you read, the newer version doesn't say that, but the older versions will say that there were other people outside.
Which is a big difference.
It's a huge difference.
Yeah.
Why would they want it to think? They just want us to think that we all came from this one race of people. So think of all the things that happened. And they weren't the only ones. So Adam and Eve had these sons, Cain and Abel, which most people know the story of Cain and Abel. Cain kills his brother because he's jealous of him.
Yeah.
But after he kills his brother, he goes to this town to get away from his family because, he's committed this great, horrible travesty. Anybody who kills their brother, their family doesn't want them around, right? So Cain leaves, he goes to this other town, and he finds a woman that he marries, but he's not related to. So I was like, how is that possible if Adam and Eve were the only people on the planet?
Right, how is it not
who
just
were producing? Yeah, how can he not be related?
So maybe it was just a bunch of clones, Adamu, like the Annunaki tale.
Right,
Yeah,
exactly.
Which is really bizarre. Are we just alien hybrids who've been genetically made? I wonder if they make us dumber or if they keep modifying us.
I don't know. Well, because then if you think about the theory of the flood, so then the flood happens, everybody's wiped out, and now Noah has to reproduce the world.
Yeah.
But how does that work?
Right. And everything with the animals. It's like they were just keeping the animals on the ark to get their genetics, I guess, is the theory. Right.
But what if, because we kind of talked about it, I think we've got it on the list. What if Noah was really this ship that he had was not really an actual metaphorical boat, because they've never found an actual giant ark. But what if it's like we see in movies and TV today that it's a spaceship, and so he goes off and he's hovering over the land while the flood's coming, and in this he's got DNA of every subject.
Yeah, that makes way more sense, at least the DNA portion, because how are they going to repopulate Earth? And it's pretty cruel. They're pretty cruel creators to just wipe everything out.
Right. And he was given plans to build this ship, right? He was given plans to build the ship. So to me, that makes more sense for it to be a flying ship, because they used totally different technology than we use for planes today. Like now we have to have fuel. I don't think they needed fuel to run their ships.
And if Enoch has such great a relationship with these aliens, that would have been passed down to Noah. You would think that aliens were helping him build it as well, or giving it to him. But there is one account in the Bible that I wanted to talk about, which was Ezekiel's wheel. This is going to be the main thing people are going to bring up who believe in the ancient astronaut theory. So there's, the Bible really freaks me out. I've never really been able to read it because it's just disturbing. There's so many weird things that happen. Yeah. So I really have a small grasp on all the craziness that's in there, but this is one of the weirder accounts. So Ezekiel, they say he had a vision of a flying wheeled chariot. Ancient astronaut theorists see Ezekiel's vision as an actual spaceship or UFO sighting, and they think that it was an advanced species trying to reach out for humans. Von Daniken, he's the guy who came up with the Chariot of the Gods book, which is pretty infamous for anyone who's into ancient astronaut theories.
Yes.
So
I have this book and it's really good.
Oh, cool. I've never actually read it. Yeah. And he mentions the idea that Ezekiel's vision was that of a space shuttle rather than a divine chariot like it's described in biblical texts. And then they say that one of the more interesting characteristics of the book of Ezekiel as a biblical text is that it's written in the pronoun I. So it's written from a first person account, which is not really common, they're saying, for most biblical texts that are written in the third person. So some like to say this actually gives it more of a credibility of not being a vision, but like a first-hand account. Ezekiel describes seeing a wheeled chariot descending towards him from the sky, and it's piloted by beings with the likeness of man. He describes this metallic object, and the first verse states that the heavens were opened, he saw visions of God, and this speaks of descriptions of gleaming objects that appear to be a wheel within a wheel, and many reports of UFOs in contemporary times speak of a craft being made of circles kind of within each other, spinning around, kind of like a propulsion system. So they're trying to interpret Ezekiel's wheel kind of more literally and connect it to this whole UFO ancient astronaut theory. The wheeled chariot landing sounds much like that of the landing of a spacecraft. The windstorms, there's flash of lightning, and they talk about these brilliant lights. They're more reminiscent of a spacecraft, is what ancient alien theorists are saying. It even describes it landing and kicking up dirt, and it's just a big spectacle before him. So Ezekiel describes there being fire powering the chariot, and it appeared like glowing metal. He said, I looked and I saw a windstorm coming out of the north, an immense cloud with flashing lightning and surrounded by brilliant light. The center of the fire looked like glowing metal, and in the fire was what looked like 4 living creatures. In appearance, their form was human, but each of them had 4 faces and 4 wings. Their legs were straight, their feet were like those of a calf and gleamed like burnished bronze. So he's talking about actual weird sounding creatures. And I don't know how I feel about this, because the way he describes it, it's so odd. He said, I saw a wheel on the ground beside each creature with its 4 faces. This was the appearance and structure of the wheels. They sparkled like topaz, and all 4 looked alike. Each appeared to be made like a wheel intersecting a wheel. As they moved, they would go in any of the 4 directions the creatures faced. The wheels did not change directions as the creature went. Spread out above the heads of the living creatures was what looked something like a vault sparkling like crystal. So they say, could that crystal vault be like an astronaut's helmet? You know? So, I don't know. To me, it doesn't really make sense.
That makes me think of Windows.
It's just really, really freaking bizarre. The whole thing to me sounds quite odd, and that the angels that he saw that were like basically kind of piloting it had 4 faces, like the face of a lion and an eagle and like all this crazy stuff.
Right. But what if those were helmets too? Or maybe it was like a body with these other heads? I don't know, like a Medusa situation.
That's what it sounds like, yeah.
Yeah.
These creatures with the likeness of man then take Ezekiel with them in their craft, bringing him to a temple on the top of the highest mountain. During his flight there, Ezekiel mentions feeling the hand of God on him, which could be interpreted as the force of gravity or G-forces he felt when taking off. And he's taken to these beings' temple, which is like a staging area or a city where they reside. So he has an actual abduction, flight, taken somewhere, and transported.
Yeah.
So... And people have tried to debunk it. There's this one guy, he wrote a book about it. He called it The Spaceships of Ezekiel, Joseph Blumrich. And he made the blueprints and drawings based on his descriptions of the craft. And you can even go, I can maybe post a picture of those. But
yeah, I've never seen that before. Is it fascinating?
It's got like the bronze to feet that he talks about in the scripture, and like the dome head. And like it's kind of like a little metal round body, so a little bit like fatter and shorter than the typical flying saucer when you think about like the old school just like saucer cartoons. So if you just make it stubbier and a little bit shorter with legs.
Okay,
so
I'll have to look that up because I haven't seen that before.
I don't know if I would say that's a UFO or not. What do you feel about the Ezekiel's wheel?
Initially when I read it, I was fascinated with this because I grew up religious. So when I was a kid, I do remember reading about this and thinking, so there was this round object and all these little round objects came out of the bigger round object. That's how I read it as. So I was like, okay, so like the mother craft and then these other ones, like I was thinking of Star Wars. So if you think of the big craft and all these other little starfighter ships are coming into the bigger craft. That's how I thought of it as.
Yeah.
So I was like, shoot, is this the first script of Star Wars? Was Ezekiel just Luke Skywalker?
Right. These little beasts are Chewbacca just coming down.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's pretty weird. But there's other stuff in the Bible, too, that we wanted to cover, which was Mary's pregnancy and Jesus's birth are also kind of hard to wrap your head around or explain. So there's this minister, Barry Downing. He's actually a firm believer in biblical texts of Christianity, but he does think that they point to the first ever recorded events of an alien abduction and UFO sightings. And him, along with a lot of other people, think that the Virgin Mary's encounter with Angel Gabriel is an indicator of an alien abduction. So that they didn't just make it a miracle, they actually inseminated her with this alien-human hybrid.
Right, which is totally plausible. I mean, we can inseminate people today, so why couldn't we do it?
Right.
You know, if there were aliens, they could do it back then.
Right, and people who have gotten abducted have claimed of getting pregnant, I know. I've never looked into those cases. That's something we should do in the future.
Yes, absolutely.
But this would also explain Jesus's crazy powers. And a lot of weird stuff kind of started happening on the night of the birth. So, like the Star of Bethlehem, which is the star that's leading the 3 wise men to the stable where Jesus is born, could have been a UFO sighting because the 3 wise men, they knew of the existence of the star would guide them to Jesus' birthplace. They went to Jerusalem to tell King Herod, and he didn't really know what they were talking about or know of the existence of the star or any of the people in his court. They didn't know what he was talking about. So people are like, well, how could these people not know this giant bright star that shines so obviously in the sky was it there just temporarily as a UFO, like guiding them? And they do describe that it actually sounds like it's moving more freely in the sky and not just a stationary object, because when the wise men are describing it, they say it's a star in the east, and that somehow guides them south to the location of Jesus. So I think that would be a really cool theory if that were true.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, hang a little UFO above your nativity scene this year.
Right. And you know, I thought an angel told them what they needed to bring to the birthing site too.
As far as gifts, or?
Yeah, as far as gifts go.
Mm-hmm. And I have no idea what they brought. Wasn't it just like useless stuff like gold?
Myrrh. No, it was myrrh. It was frankincense, myrrh, and something else. It was like incense. Yeah.
I guess that's nice.
It was like stuff. It was stuff to give for blessings.
So very magical and occultish.
Right.
Yeah. Be like, thanks for the incense.
Yeah, exactly. I needed this.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
There's this thing called the Lost Books of the Bible. So I guess this didn't make it in there. It's a book called Infancy and Protevangelion, and it describes that these weird experiences that they had the night of Jesus' birth, and it's kind of similar to abductees' experiences of our times. So
I haven't heard of this.
It's kind of fascinating. It says that kind of like when people are abducted, they experience this phenomenon where everything around them stops, like all the people, they just kind of switch off. And this is exactly what Joseph experienced right before the birth of Jesus. So here's like the description from this lost book of the Bible. It said that I looked into the air and I saw the clouds astonished and the fowls of the air stopping in the midst of their flight. And I looked down towards the earth and saw a table spread and working people sitting around it. But their hands were upon the table and they did not move to eat. They who had meat in their mouths did not eat. They who lifted their hands up to their heads did not draw them back. And they who lifted them up to their mouths did not put anything in. But all their faces were fixed upwards. And I looked unto a river and saw the kids with their mouths close to the water and touching it, but they did not drink. And then this bright cloud overshadowed the cave, and the midwife said, This day my soul is magnified, for mine eyes have seen surprising things, and salvation is brought forth to Israel. All of a sudden the cloud became a bright light in the cave, so their eyes could not bear it, and behold, it was filled with lights, greater than the light of lamps and candles, and greater than the light of the sun itself. So why would Mary's vagina just like, this amazing light?
It's coming out.
It's pretty crazy. So does that mean that the aliens are somehow doing something to stop everybody?
Maybe. Yeah. Oh my gosh, that's so crazy. I've never heard that. The only tell that I heard read was that all of these people were coming to try to kill the baby.
And this is something that's not in the Bible?
This is something that's in the Bible.
Okay.
That people were coming to kill the baby, and they were stopped. They were murdered so that they couldn't come try to kill the baby that was being born, because this baby was supposed to bring great wonders and gifts to the world. So then reading this on top of that, I guess it all kind of makes sense to me. I'm just still thinking of your comment. Her vagina was just like glowing when this baby comes out.
Yeah. I'm kind of thinking, okay, who's manipulating these people to want to come kill Jesus? I don't know a lot about the Bible to like know the narrative,
right?
But I was also thinking like, okay, maybe there was demons who were influencing them. And if we're going to say in this theory that aliens are angels, then aliens are demons.
Right.
Which is so creepy.
Yeah. So it's just a bad force of
so
aliens,
like reptilians.
Yeah. Well, I don't know much about reptilians.
I think that's
something we'll have to research.
I would love to research them. It sounds like this cockamamie theory that I will love to dive into and maybe even become afraid of. But from what I know is that they are an evil race who want to come and conquer, and like they're evil. They don't have good things in mind for humanity. I think they would want to wipe you out or control you, which I guess all aliens that want to control us or are controlling us.
Right. But, I mean, especially if the Annunaki were just making humans so that they could so that we could serve them.
Yeah.
I mean, basically that's what we read in the Bible all the time is we're here to serve them.
Right.
Serve the Lord, the boss. We're here to work for the boss.
Right. Yeah. And like every time that this thing gets edited and changed and revised, they're taking out more of these. For some reasons, there's a lot of weird fantastical elements still in there, but I think they're all trying to say that they're visions. And they're filtering out the ones that are obvious real life incidents.
Right.
I don't know. It's pretty crazy.
It is crazy. So let's talk a little bit about Jesus's alien powers.
Yes.
So then this little boy turned into a man. And as far as I know, Jesus didn't actually live a very long life because he was supposedly murdered, at a younger age than, because if you think of, I guess when I say at a younger age, he was still older, but he hadn't lived the 600 years that people were living around that time period.
Oh, wow. Is that common in the Bible?
Yeah. Yeah. In the old days, they used to live for hundreds and hundreds of years. And then at some point I read that along the way that they stopped letting humans live that long. The aliens said that it wasn't right. There was something about it that they needed to come back and monitor. They needed to change our DNA so that we didn't live as long.
Yeah.
There were reasons behind it, although I can't remember. I should have wrote it.
It says that Jesus died around the age of 33 to 36.
Okay, so that's young.
Is.
That's really young.
And he did a lot of crazy cool things.
He did. So like some of the things that he did was he brought people back from the dead like a necromancer. Mm-hmm. I found that very interesting. I was like, okay, so I can get behind Jesus being a necromancer and not a messiah. Sure. He performed exorcisms like on a regular basis.
He was really known for that.
Mm-hmm. He took material objects such as wood, seeds, and food and made it grow or multiply.
Wait, if we go back to the exorcism thing, I'm just trying to digest this. Thinking
sure.
about it as an aliens. So if we're going back to the fact that angels are the good aliens who are fighting the demon aliens who are trying to take over the humans, that kind of goes back to the whole reptilian thing, because they say that reptilians, they kind of disguise themselves as humans and they try to take you over.
Yeah, and so if he's exercising them, he's exercising the right for
this war of aliens. It has nothing to do with us, really.
Right. It's crazy.
Yeah, I had to just digest that a little bit.
That's all right. And so when I say, he took all of these objects and he multiplied them. So like if he was at a party or something and they didn't have enough food, he would make it within the blink of an eye.
What a good host. Who would not want to go to Jesus's parties? There'd be like, he'd freaking have an exorcism, a great cheese spread.
Right. So then there was also this thing that I read where he was able to make birds out of clay and then make them fly.
Oh, what?
Like robots is what I thought.
Oh.
I was like robots. And so when they said it, they said that he would make these birds out of clay and then turn them into real so that they could fly. But I took it as he made these clay birds that looked real fly.
And what was his purpose of doing this? Was he just showing off to be like, look at my powers of God? Was he just trying to prove?
No, he wasn't like that. Everything I read about Jesus is that he was very modest.
Yeah.
he made this to entertain people.
So he was just kind of going around, and I guess he had that 3-year
Yeah.
journey, right, where he had to go traveling and kind of like spread the word and help people.
Yeah, and so I was just thinking, he comes into this village and he sees all these people and they're not happy. He's like, you know what? I'm going to make these guys some birds and they're going to smile.
Yeah, he's like a really good guy.
Yeah. He also had the ability to control weather. Like, he could make storms stop. So if he was in this one village, there was a story where he was in a village and this massive storm came. It was these rains and this horrible wind. And he's like, you know what? I'm going to make this stop. And he made it stop. And then there was this fight. He parted the Red Sea.
Yeah.
With his hands.
Right.
So I'm like, that sounds like magic.
Dude, yeah, he's starting to sound sexier and sexier. I'm just like,
right?
Whoa.
With that long hair, that tan skin.
He can make me food whenever I want.
Yes.
Like, I'm hungry.
So, yeah. So he also had the ability to heal those who were sick or crippled. So let's say somebody was sick. So he's this massive, wonderful doctor. Somebody came to him and they were like, oh, I've got these sores all over my body. He'd just be like, touch their forehead and then they're better. Mm-hmm. Or they
couldn't
not
he
walk,
heal like
they
leprosy
use their
too?
Hands. Yes, he could heal any disease.
Yeah. Oh, cool.
So how would that be possible if he weren't alien?
So he's just got, so that means that aliens are super dicks and they let us have all these horrible diseases and they're just watching us. But at any point in time, they do have this technology so great that we can't even like, our lives would be forever changed.
Right.
I wonder
right.
what the,
it's
if
true.
the aliens are still doing this, if they're still watching us, what are they getting out of it,
I don't know. I was thinking, so I did read somewhere that aliens live about 2,000 years. Well, it's been more than 2,000 years, right? Mm-hmm. Since the Anunnaki were here.
Right, so who's taking over?
So who's taken over? Maybe they don't care about us anymore. Yeah. It depends on what happened on their planet.
Right, because I think what I was reading in the legends is that they wanted the gold to help with their atmosphere, that didn't even work. Oh, and you know what? I'm going off on a tangent here, sorry. But back to that whole Planet 9 thing and the Anunnaki, there have been scientific journals and evidence about this massive planet that comes every, I think is it like 30,000 years or something like that. I'm so bad I didn't take the notes on it, but that there are actual articles saying that they can find this planet every now and then.
Right. Yeah. Every once in a while they can show us.
So that's not bullshit, that planet so close to us is there that we never talk about.
Right. And supposedly that planet is supposed to be coming towards us soon, I think.
I'm scared.
Yeah.
Okay, so what were Jesus' other powers?
Oh, yeah. Back to Jesus. So he also had this ability that he could walk through closed doors or rocks with his material body. So he would come to a door and want to go inside the house, but rather than open the door like a normal person, he would just materialize onto the other side.
Phase on through.
Which made me think, yeah, he just phased through it. Kind of like the Flash.
I was thinking like Kitty Pryde, how she walks through objects.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
I mean, so I think one person I saw on a YouTube video was trying to say, is Jesus a hologram?
No, what I read was that because his vibrational level is higher, he can use his vibrations to walk through doors and rocks.
Yeah.
And walls.
That's pretty cool.
I'm like, shoot, so if Jesus can raise his vibration, I am going to frickin' try to walk through this door.
Seriously.
Just kidding.
Seriously, I have to study these old like yoga sutras right now for my yoga teacher training certification. And there's this whole sutra about how like if you are like this perfect guru and all this and all that, you will have the powers of Jesus. And I was just like, what? I got to reread this.
Sweet. You're like, I need to tap into this.
Here we come, Jesus powers. I'm a-coming.
That's right. Okay, so one of my favorite things that Jesus could do was he could turn water into wine in the blink of an eye.
That's what gets him in your heart.
That's what gets him in my heart. So apparently he was at this wedding and they didn't have enough wine. They had one bottle of wine.
I'm telling you,
he was
man,
able
he's
to
a great party host.
Yeah, he just came and he brought this water and he was like, I'm making this water into wine for everybody.
Such a good party guy. Of course everyone loves Jesus.
I know, except for those people who killed him.
Oh, yeah. Those assholes.
Yeah. Those assholes. So then I know we kind of wanted to touch a little bit on Mary Magdalene. I did read a little bit about her. Yeah, it goes back and forth in a lot of religions, whether Mary Magdalene was married to Jesus or not. And I actually think, after reading up on it, that Mary Magdalene really was Jesus's wife,
Right.
and that they potentially had a son and a daughter. They had kids.
Yes.
Which means the line of Jesus lives on.
Yeah.
So if he's real,
Right.
If Jesus is real, then his lifeline is out there
Very
somewhere.
Da Vinci Code stuff. But I think it's true because
Right.
I've seen some documentaries, so maybe that's not the best source of information on History Channel, but that like there are the Dead Sea Scrolls, and that there's omissions of just a specific word about how like in Jesus something like Mary Magdalene, and they're like, well, it sounds like maybe
Right.
she kissed Mary Magdalene, or they even omit the words like that they got married and stuff like that. And so I don't know what the whole deal is with Christianity trying to hide that relationship. Is it because they want him to be a virgin?
Yeah, they wanted him to be a virgin and be godlike.
That's silly to
They wanted
me.
him to be like God, and so
I guess, yeah,
you
in their
know,
minds, gods don't like fornicate, but from a
Right,
pagan
which is not
mindset, I'm like,
true.
of course gods fornicate.
Yeah. Yeah, and if God is just a group of people,
With these aliens.
you know they're fornicating. Yeah. They're getting it on. They're even getting it on with the Adams and the Eves.
I'm making Niflheim, so.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I believe that Mary Magdalene and him, if they were real, that they were definitely in a relationship.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's this little theory, too, that they had this daughter named Tamar, and that she gave birth to King Arthur. So if people who believe in King Arthur, they try to say that he was actually a real person, and that the bloodline is the Holy Grail.
Oh, that's just like the Da
Right,
Vinci Code.
exactly.
Yeah. Interesting.
So a lot of ancient text with crazy lores of our beginnings, and if you look at them literally, I mean, we had a pretty crazy beginning to our civilization, you know?
Yeah.
And like we said, it makes me wonder if they genetically made us then to do their work, what was the point of keeping us here?
Right. Why did, especially, yeah, if they were done working with us, why did they let us live? If not for us to come up with some sort of, I mean, yeah, my mind is reeling because seriously, what if it's that they created us so we could create something for them so that they could try to come back and save their planet? And so some of them may still be here and watching us, waiting for us to create this thing so that these aliens could go back in time and save their planet. I mean, that's full on out there, but it's a possibility.
It is a lot of
if
out there
Jesus
stuff.
is a possibility.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, the Bible is super out there. So the fact that people, without even reading it, most people will just be like, yeah, I'll buy into that. But it's like, have you ever really read what they're saying in there? It is some crazy stuff.
Right. Yeah.
So,
a lot of sexist stuff in the Bible. I hate to say that, but I have to bring that up, is that there's a lot of sexist stuff in there. But I think that was put in later on. It didn't start out that way. That was put later on so that men could control women. That's my theory, and I'm sticking by that.
yeah, that's one of my least favorite things about it is definitely the sexism.
But they use magic stuff in there.
They do.
But yet look down on people who do magic, and they believe in dreams explaining, like being prophetic.
Right.
But now, at least from my experience, that's shunned.
Yes, it very much so is shunned. So it's like the aliens, they don't want us to still have exposure to this stuff. They're still trying to keep it down. I don't know why. And people still shun you if you even believe in aliens. So a lot of this stuff is just like taboo. You're crazy.
Yeah. Well.
We're on to you, Annunaki.
Yes.
I'm definitely going to look at UFOs with that in the back of my mind now going forward. Like, are they watchers? Did they create us? Are they looking out for us?
Right.
Are they controlling me?
Right.
Yeah. Maybe.
And I think I've told you before that I've had dreams about the Watchers before I knew who the Watchers were.
I think we should unpack that. So can you, what was the context of the dream?
So I had this dream when I was in high school that this goes back to my kids way before they were born. So I had this dream in high school that I swear I've talked about this before, but maybe just not
I think
on the
you told me,
podcast.
but I need a refresher too.
Okay. So like I had this dream. It was kind of like I was laying in bed. This isn't the dream. In reality, I was sitting in bed and I was doing some homework, and then all of a sudden I was in this dream state. So I don't know if I fell asleep or if I just went into this trance-like state where I was having this thing happening to me. But I was all of a sudden in this room and I was watching a movie of my life, like from beginning to end.
Oh my gosh.
And so as it came to an end, I turned around and there were these people sitting at this table. And I was like, who are you guys? And they were like, we're the Watchers. And I was like, okay. And there were like 5 of them, and 4 or 5. I think there were 5. Anyways, they were there and they were telling me that I ruined my life and I ruined the life of my children.
Rude.
And so, well, that's the thing, is that I really did. I didn't live to be the age that I am now. In this dream, it was like I reached a certain point in my life and I made a wrong choice, and I died and my kids died.
Wow.
And this was before I even knew my children existed. But I was like begging and pleading, saying that to the Watchers. I was like, but those are my kids. They need to continue to live on. And they were like, well, you made this choice. And so this is what happened. And I was begging for my kids in my life. And I was like, I need them. And they were like, we are going to bring them out here and you are going to tell them that you're sorry. And it's crazy because when my kids reached the age that they are in this dream, they looked just like these children that the Watchers brought out for me. And I was like, I knew what point in my life it was once I hit that point that I needed to change something in my life or my kids were going to die in reality. Like when I hit that point in my life, it was kind of like all these dominoes went into effect. Am I making sense?
It seems like this was some sort of like awakening, and they shook you into a different reality, maybe?
Yes, I think so. It's very possible. But it was like they brought my kids out and I just dropped onto my knees and I was just crying, telling them how sorry I was. And I was like, these kids are my everything. And the kids were just holding on to me, saying how much they loved me. Aww. And the Watcher said these children were really important and that I needed to take care of them. And if I wanted to continue to grow and wanted them to continue to grow and to help people in the world, then when I get to that point in my life, I'm going to have those 2 paths, and either it's going to end and I'm not going to get a second chance, or I'm going to go on to do better things. And so I feel that I've went on to do better things.
Yeah, that's pretty crazy. And
it's intense, right?
It's very prophetic, because you said they looked how they look now, your children.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, at that point, it was like when my son was 3 and my daughter was
pretty young, but still
7 or 8.
Oh, yeah. Still, you could tell. And what did the Watchers look like?
They looked like you and me, like everyday people. And when I was talking to them, it was just like I was in this room.
I guess that makes sense, going back to the theme of our episode. If we're going to believe that these aliens made us in their image, then that's what they look like.
Right. And they were wearing these robes of different colors.
Very cool stuff. Very interesting.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah.
And so you've never had a dream with them in it ever again?
No.
Right. And have you ever been able to figure out what that mistake was or that life was?
Yes.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, yeah. So I'm not going to say it because it's a little personal.
Yeah.
But it was just this point in my life where I was down a really bad path.
Gotcha.
And so now it was like I knew when it was when that bad part in my life was happening. I was like, this is it. This is the time. This is the thing that I need to change.
Right. Well, thanks for sharing that. I know that's not always easy, but
yeah,
of course,
a little personal.
You would have an experience with the Watcher.
I'm so sorry.
It's hilarious. I love it. You're like, well, there was this one time I had sex with the Watcher.
No.
So what is your take on this? Do you believe in aliens in the Bible?
I do.
Nice. I don't think I know enough about the Bible enough to say yes for sure.
Right.
But I do enjoy looking at these creation mythos and theorizing.
Right. I just think of it as if the Bible were a part of our history. If any of it is true, for me, the alien aspect would be the truth of it.
Yeah, that's my explanation for everything. Aliens.
Aliens did it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, guys. Well, thanks for listening. Make sure to join us next Wednesday for a tantalizing discussion about Santa Claus and his little helpers. And don't forget to follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram, and check out our blog at cousinscoven.home.blog. We're also on YouTube, Spotify, iTunes, and everywhere else podcasts can be found. So send in your cauldron topic ideas, questions, your paranormal or alien experiences into cousinscoven2@gmail.com, and make sure to head over to our website so you can sign up for our newsletter.
Yes, thank you. Don't forget to subscribe, and may you find happiness in your heart, love for yourself, and joy in each other. Blessings to all.